Hey, it's Chris Liege Games. So, do you like convention, bro? And what I mean by that is, especially in light of the now upcoming PAX East, how do you feel about conventions? Board game conventions specifically, obviously. Let's talk. Now, board game conventions are, in theory, a great thing. Absolutely fantastic, don't get me wrong. But let me also tell you at the same time why I will probably never go to a board game convention. And let me set the background here. There are three aspects of my life, essentially, right now that are influencing this. One, board gamer. Two, maker of these videos. Channel of board games. Three, I'm a dad and a husband. And when you overlap all three of those, therein lies the problem, right? Those things are significantly influential on everyday life. And as the board gamer, we'll start there. As the board gamer, I go, yeah, man, that sounds awesome. I would love to go to a convention and play games all day and meet people and meet publishers and pick up new games that are on the hotness that maybe you can't get yet, or maybe that you can get some promos that are going to be awesome to go with my game. And then the actuality of a convention, right? And again, nothing against conventions, but the actuality of a convention is, okay, you play games, but, I have personally some social anxiety. Even pre-pandemic, right? I am very reluctant to play games with people I don't know. That makes me a bit anxious. And I don't know if any of you are in the same realm as me or not. But now, that has not gotten any better by any means. And also, it's one thing, like, I have a huge collection. Huge. And I have plenty of stuff in here that I haven't played, and plenty of stuff that I want to play, and plenty of stuff that I know that I like. And part of a convention is potentially playing stuff you haven't played or you don't have access to. But it also, at the same time, is learning some of those games. Like, I'll sit down and try and learn a game for like an hour before trying to play it with someone else, or longer, or potentially shorter, depending on the length of the game. And then to try and do that with a bunch of strangers around a table where time is limited and not knowing personalities and dynamics, that's not always necessarily how I want to spend my time, right? The other aspect of that, again, some of the bigger conventions, especially, not only are you trying to do that, but you're also potentially paying cash, not only to get into the convention, but you're paying cash to then play events, whether that is just an open library or individual events at some of the bigger ones like Gen Con. And I look at that as, that's a lot of money. That's a significant portion of money that I could spend elsewhere. And again, as overlapping into the two other realms, specifically the third one, if we're going to talk about that a second, that's money family-wise spent elsewhere, whether it's for this, or just something else. And that's to do the same thing that I already have here, right? Still in shrink. Don't have to go pay to play it somewhere else. Already paid for it. Having a hard enough time playing it right now. And if I want to spend all day doing this, I could spend a fraction of the cost buying food, supplementing it, and doing a Liege of Games Con with a couple of the guys locally. And say, hey, honey, would you mind taking the kids to your parents' house, my parents' house, and just, hey, we can play games for 8 or 10 hours and buy food and everything, great. Boom, there you go. Get a couple games played off of my shelf with opportunity shame, and then go from there. No travel, lower cost, get to play what I want, how I want, when I want. So, those are significant factors. Now, again, let's skip to the second one. The me making videos, right? And this is where I see things all the time. And I don't know how much you guys see it, but especially with some of the groups that I have joined or some of the people that I have interacted with, and there is a high, I'm going to this event, I'm going to this, I'm marketing, I'm networking, rubbing shoulders, elbows, whatever you want to say. And that's also the stuff that always gets posted on social media, right? I see a lot of the people who are doing these interactions, and again, it's sort of like, it's a clique. And it becomes that way when you go to the conventions. It gets reinforced, and then it is then either reinforced further on social media, or that is how it starts in the first place. What do you do with that? Right? You guys have heard me say this isn't a full-time job for me. This isn't even a part-time job for me. This is a truly hobby. So again, like, I'd love to have some of those interactions, but I can't justify it because, again, going and interacting with number 3 now again. Hey, honey, I'm going to leave you here with the wife and kids for a 3-day weekend, really more of a 4, and I'm going to spend some of my limited time off from work to go play board games in another city a couple hundred miles away and spend a couple hundred, if not more, dollars on the expenses, let alone anything else I'm going to spend on the games or anything I get along the way as, souvenirs, hobby games, whatever it may be. And that's where it overlaps with number 1 of I don't have that flexibility just from a regular gamer standpoint, right? It's really easy if you're local to one of these conventions. It's really easy if you are single, in a relationship, married even, without kids. But you throw in kids in there and it's a whole other ballgame, right? Like the burden that I would feel in terms of guilt of leaving my wife here with the 3 kids, because again, you guys are going to be like, oh, well, they just come. No. You guys have heard me say my wife is willing to play games with me, but she is by no means like in the hobby. And so I'm not going to drag her along so that she can come with and then manage the kids elsewhere with less support and less accoutrement around to help keep them occupied, entertained, if you will. So from that aspect too, it's just, strike 2. But I guess that's the question. How worth it are conventions to you? If you are an average person in the hobby, you have 20 or 30 games, you have 50 games, you have 100 games. How interesting are conventions to you? I feel like they're a novelty in my mind. I feel like they are akin to the carnival growing up, if you will, right? When you're a kid, the idea, the premise, the naivety of a carnival is a great thing, right? You go there, you win some prizes, you have some fun. You don't realize until you get older and you go there again when you're 18, 25, 35, whatever it may be, or you go there with your kids and you see how much of a eye-opener it is at that point, right? The games themselves are significantly skewed one way. The prizes are, I'd rather go pay more money or about the same amount of money it'd take to win one of those prizes at a store, because it'd be better quality and it may even be cheaper in the long run depending on how many times you have to win the game. And I'm not saying conventions are exactly the same, but the one convention I ever went to, it was sort of like that, right? I tried to experience some of those things, and it just felt lackluster. And part of that maybe was expectations. Maybe I had my expectations too high, but even now, I have almost better alternatives here. And so it's just a very interesting dynamic because this part of me still yearns for the convention, right? To have some of those things that I mentioned and to be able to do some of those things with other people who are as interested in it as me. So how do you reconcile that? The answer is, I don't really know. I don't. And so I just keep doing what I'm doing. But I know that, just based off of some of the reactions that I see, that there are definitely some really good things coming out of conventions. People really have a good time and they really enjoy themselves as an interaction with other people who are as interested as they are. And I think that's probably the biggest point. Now, I guess the other downside of conventions, and I always think this is an interesting aspect of things, and you can tell me how you feel about this one as well. I see people come back from conventions with just like, you see these all the time on like social media, right? These stacks of games that they come back with. We always talk about riding the hype train, the hotness, if you will. And these conventions, I feel like they are predatory from that aspect as well. And we talk about it, people complain about it all the time online. And then they go and they turn around and they do the exact thing at the conventions that they complain about, whether it's Kickstarter, whether it's retail, it's pre-order, or along those lines. Because all of a sudden, you can get it there, or you can get that promo with it. Again, it plays on FOMO. Conventions do a lot of the time, right? Oh, we're going to be releasing this game a month early to you if you pick it up in this convention. Oh, we're going to have one exclusive promo that you can get only here at this convention. I know that was more pre-pandemic, but we're seeing less of it, but it still happens. I mean, we saw it last year with Unfathomable. We saw it with, I think, Merchants of the Dark Road. A few of those releases where there was a limited supply either brought over intentionally to sell at a higher price, or brought over to entice people to buy it then. Again, sort of playing on the FOMO before it was fully released and before people fully knew what some of these games were and whether or not they'd like them. But let's get it into your hands regardless. And that's more of a retail issue, especially. You see that more on the retail side rather than just the crowdfunding. But it happens with both, just depending on what convention and the timing of the convention more than anything else. I mean, you see it with Essen, you see it with Gen Con. I think you saw it last year with one of the other ones that's late in the fall, maybe PAX Tabletop. So it's not exclusively one or the other by any means. So I guess herein lies the question. If you are interested in conventions, what is something that would make you really want to go? Is it the interactions? Is it the library? Is it the exclusivity? Is it the grass is always greener? I mean, that's the big one for me, right? The grass is always greener. I'm seeing other people doing it and I'm feeling like I'm missing out. If there's something that turns you off about conventions, what is that? The same sort of thing. I have trouble, and I have had trouble with FOMO on crowdfunding. And I think conventions also prey on that just as much, except they just don't get called out on it as much. And so that's one thing that is a turn off for me overall. But it's a very interesting topic because I can see where they are also very, very good for the hobby of introducing people to new things and introducing people to new games and introducing more people to the hobby, especially when you have conventions that are not truly board game conventions like PAX East, which is primarily a video game one, a console one, PC, with now incorporated tabletop. Because you're definitely going to hit a lot of people there that may have some of their first exposures or some of the best exposures that they can have, potentially, I mean, asterisks next to that, to get them interested in the hobby in the first place. So, I mean, it's clearly not black and white, but those are my thoughts on it, and that's why I really can't ever see myself potentially going to a convention again as much as I want to, in some ways. Maybe if one of my kids actually starts really wanting to play stuff and is really interested, I could see myself maybe going then. But again, kids being kids, right? Even my 8-year-old, he is not at the point where, okay, Dad, let's walk around for 20 minutes and let's be done, right? Paying the price of a convention badge for something like that, even like locally, spend more time driving back and forth than we probably would like checking things out and being super interested. So I don't know. Maybe when one of them gets old enough to get waist deep in the hobby with me. We'll see. Who knows? Probably not. I'm still trying to indoctrinate them, but it's not going very well, I'll tell you. Okay, that's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great weekend. Almost pre-weekend. It's almost weekend.